Captain Dave Hansen with my good buddy Marley right up above my head here. Here he is. Marley, man, what are you doing? There he is. He just got done having some mangoes. He's all fired up because of Tim Ogilvy giving us those mangoes. Marley's eating them up, loving them. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's Wednesday. It's Okuma Wednesday, and it's Bill Varney Fish the Surf Wednesday. We always bring Bill in on Wednesdays, and today we got him with us, and we got a great topic to talk about today. But first of all, it's Okuma Wednesday. Let y'all know we'll be showing you some videos about Okuma here midway through the show. Check out the reels that we're going to be talking about. Jeanette, nice to see you. And we got lots of stuff to talk about today as far as surf fishing goes. Things are starting to look up. Maybe we're going to have one more little storm and then everything will get back to normal here. Hopefully that's what's happening. But boy, we had a whopper of a storm come through this weekend. That was pretty crazy. And then I guess we get another little one here Thursday, Friday, and then looks like the weekend's going to be beautiful finally. So I'm excited about that. And I want to thank everybody for watching the show yesterday. That fishing live on the water with Justin Botrell, Bowline Sport Fishing. Right now we're at 7,000 views. It's incredible. We are definitely on to something, Jeanette and Dave. I think we got a good thing going here. People are way into watching Justin out there fishing. So this is good. We're very excited. And then, yeah, Jeanette, Saturday looks really good. John Stanley, absolutely. Turn off the fan. I just told Bill Varney I had to turn off my air conditioner so you guys could hear me. It's about 85 degrees down here in Cabo already. Sorry. But, yeah, everything's going good, everybody. I'm super happy to be here with you today. I'm super happy to have Bill with us today. And without any further ado, let's bring Bill Varney in and get to our topic today. Let's start talking, buddy. Good morning.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Dave. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you.
What's the weather like in beautiful Colorado today?
Oh, it's beautiful today. It's about 50. Shut up. That's my child. It's about 50 degrees today here. It's absolutely beautiful. Had a little bit of snow over the weekend, but right now we're in the springtime, and over the next probably 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have a little bit more snow, but more melting will go on than snow. And really today would be the day that you can get out there and start fishing at some of these rivers over the hill from me that are a little bit lower elevation. So yeah, we're right around the corner for summer here. It's amazing. I'm also right around the corner from about 8 fishing trips this summer too. So it's going to be busy.
Oh, good. Are you coming out here to go surf fishing?
Yeah, I'm going to be down in Cabo on around the 3rd week in May for about a week or so. So I'll be down there, Cabo on the East Cape, hanging out down there. I'm going to be over in Las Vegas at Lake Mead in about 3 weeks, striper fishing. Then we'll be down at the beach on July 27th, Saturday, for a Bolsa Chica surf fishing clinic with CCA. Going to be doing that. I'm going to be going up to Oregon and catching some albacore, have a well-rounded trip up there because we go albacore fishing, rockfish fishing, we catch salmon, and then before we come home, we get a bunch of clams. So we're going to be doing that this summer. Going to be going to Costa Rica in November, just all over the place. And then up in October, we'll be up at Morro Bay for another CCA on the beach surf fishing clinic. So between all those things, I'll be down in San Diego doing some surf fishing too and visiting my parents. So that's what's going on.
Nice, nice, nice. So you mentioned to me earlier before we went live here that today's Worm Wednesday, Okuma Worm Wednesday. So what are you talking about?
It's Okuma Worm Wednesday. Today we talked. So last week we talked about Grunion. We have a little bit more to tell you about Grunion, and some things to keep in mind that many people don't realize. And then we're going to talk about worms today, of all things, and using worms in the surf, because worms are somewhat related to the Grunion. They have an inner beach relationship going on there. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. All right. What worms do we want to start talking about? Or do you want to go into Grunion? What do you
Yeah,
want to
let's
talk
talk a
about
little.
first?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Grunion first, just to kind of finish off our discussion last week. You know, Dave, when you cut me off at an hour and a half every day, that's just not fair. I don't have enough time.
I know.
so so give me some time. So going back to the Grunion. So here's something I wanted everybody to know about Grunion that we didn't talk about. And to be honest with you, other than biologists, I've never really heard an angler talk about this. So when the grunion come up on the beach, so that's like a 4 or 5 day period, around the full moon and around the new moon. So basically twice a month, and then you got about maybe roughly about 4 days where they come up and spawn on the beach there. Well, when they spawn, they lay eggs, and then of course the males lay their milt and fertilize the eggs. And then the eggs are ready to hatch in about 2 weeks, in about 12 to 14 days. So how that works out is that, for example, if the grunion was to come up at high tide at a full moon, then by the time the new moon's high tide came up, the eggs would be ready to hatch. Well, how many eggs are there on the beach? There's billions or maybe there's trillions, probably trillions. I'm not very good at math, but probably trillions of eggs on the beach there. So what happens is that the water rushes up at high tide, and it breaks that sand apart and then breaks those eggs apart from the ground. Now they actually have a little fish inside the egg. And that egg, as it rolls down and is pulled down into the water, the casing on the outside, it breaks open, and those little fish, quote unquote, they come out of the egg. Well, what they are basically is an eyeball and a tail. And a lot of people that are freshwater anglers, especially for bass fishermen, always joke about some of the baits that they use that are just like big eyeball and a tail. Well, that's what the grunion are, and they're probably about this long. They're probably about an inch long, maybe, or so. But what anglers don't realize is that when that high tide comes in and they roll down into the surf, they're kind of in that surf zone for about a day or so, and they're in the surf zone as a big eye and a tail by the thousands, if not millions, if not billions along the coast, or trillions. And so a lot of big fish, big perch, big corbina, big halibut, come in and feed on all of those fry in the surf. That's why they're so attracted to lures that look like a fish or look like a small perch, because that's basically what the grunion is. It's a tiny fish that's this eye and this tail. So if I was to go surf fishing and I say, hey, I want to have a really good shot at a big halibut or a big perch or maybe a corbina, I'm not only going to go after, let's say the day after, up to 4 or 5 days after the grunion run, but I'm going to look at the days of that grunion run, figure out what 12 to 14 days after that, and then fish the high tide periods at beach where all of that, those eyes and those little tails are swashing back in the surf. So don't, box yourself into a period of time saying, hey, we figured out where the day the grunion are coming in. We know that. We found out where they came in, so we know where to fish. We know that. But let's not just take 4 days after the grunion run. Let's come back 12 days later and fish that spot too. We're going to have a really good chance of catching some big fish.
And then John Stanley asked a question. You see it on the screen? Can you read that, Bill? I know you don't got your glasses on.
So he said, last week you mentioned some guys called the early ones. Is that right? Should we let the first ones be so they can tell the others to come up? Absolutely. That is exactly what happens. They're very similar to bees, or even ants do the same thing. They'll send in these scouts to make sure that the coast is clear. Then they'll go out and tell everybody. Bears do the same thing. Go out and tell everybody that everything's fine, and then they'll rush into the beach. So number one, you don't want to go and collect the scouts because they have no ability to go back out then and tell the other ones it's time to come in. So a lot of folks who are down there on the beach, when they see the first ones come in, they turn off their lights, they stay back from the water, they allow that to go by for about 5 or 10 minutes, let them to get up into the sand and then get back out in the water and tell the other ones to come in. And then in about, like I said, 5 to 10 minutes, they will rush in by the tens of thousands, and there'll be no question that those are really the real body, the real biomass of the Grunion. So yes, they definitely have scouts. You want to let those scouts come ashore and go back into water. Don't bother them at all.
Right. And then Brent's asking, is there a difference between the males and the females? Let me answer that. Yeah, the females are going to have that big bag of eggs in them. Their belly's going to look orange. And like Bill talks about this all the time with the sand crabs and the lures. If it's got, your lure has a little swim bait, has a little orange on their belly, boy, that makes the fish bite. If your sand crab pattern has a little orange on the belly, that makes them bite. Same thing with the Grunion, Brent. The Grunion, when they're full of eggs, whoo, that's the fish's favorite food because that's got so much energy and there's so much protein. It probably tastes way better because I don't know if you guys like those smelt eggs on your sushi when you're having sushi, but the Grunion eggs are even sweeter than that. They're pretty damn sweet. So the fish have to love it. So it's a big difference, right? Wouldn't you say, Bill?
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, that it really does. I think I've noticed kind of over the time that it seems like the male have a little bit more coloration than the females do during their spawning period. So the fact they don't have eggs, it's kind of offset by the fact that they have these bright spawning colors that attracts fish. But it's the same exact thing with sand crabs, is that they get loaded up with eggs, and then of course that's the thing that the Corbina or spotfin or yellowfin or perch is looking for. But this is the thing with sand crabs, and I would be very curious to, and I'll have to figure this out next time I go to the Grunion run, is that sand crab eggs have a specific odor to them. They really do. And as you get used to that odor, you can actually just go to the beach, and when you get in the parking lot and step out of your car, you can smell the sand crabs. Ultimately, you'll get used to what that odor is. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Grunion eggs do not have a slight odor to them also, which attracts the fish.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would make all the sense in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That they got to have a different scent. I mean, that the sea lions can smell the bait in your bait tank. They can smell it. That's why they stay with us when we got a bait tank full of, and Bill can smell the sand crab eggs. So it's got to be the same thing. The fish can smell those Grunion eggs for sure, for sure. All right. So what do you think our potential is for this? Oh, wait a minute. A couple of our members went Grunion hunting right after our show last week, and they had a phenomenal time. I know Jeanette went down and got to meet the police. She got to have an interaction with the police, and she got to
Jeanette got an awesome picture with the police officer in front of his unit. That was awesome.
Absolutely. Yep. No, it was good. And they're on our side. So that's the best thing. Because when I dial 911, I sure the hell don't want someone showing up with a little card saying, all right, well, please don't beat the hell out of my friend today. No, I want the police coming. I just can't understand. Did you see that video yesterday about the new cards that they're going to use at the subway, the BART system in San Francisco? Right before you're getting attacked now, their new way to deal with this is to hand the attacker a card. And that tells the attacker that you're about to get the poop kicked out of you. How cool is that? That's a great way to, because you don't want to alarm the police, they said. You don't want the police coming because they're not going to act appropriately. I'll tell you what, if someone's attacking me, act any way you want. Oh, my God. I don't know what's going on. My head's going to explode thinking about it right now. And oh my God.
I know, it's something, Dave, that we shouldn't talk about. I mean, because
I'm sorry,
there's so many examples. I mean, the one was the one in New York where the squatters went into this house. They finally broke the door down of personal property and went in there, and there was like 7 people. They had drugs, they had guns, they had all this stuff. They finally kicked the door down because one of them had brandished a gun to an American citizen that he was going to blow his brains out. And then they go in and kick the door down. They find all these drugs and illegals and guns and all this stuff. And all of them, I think, but 2 were let go. So you went back 30 years ago, and you and I were at home and they kicked down the door because we didn't have a license for our bicycle. And if they had found drugs and guns and money in there, we would have been in prison. So,
Yeah.
and we're American citizens. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, it's
Let's go back
impossible
to
to
the
understand.
Grunion.
I
Jason
know. Oh,
Cutter has a great thing about the Grunion, putting them in the Ziploc bag, Brett. And when they go to the big Ziploc bag, they're still spawning. I've seen that many times where the bag will have the milk in it and it'll have the eggs in it. And you're like, wow, these guys just don't give up. They're a pretty amazing little animal, like Bill and I talked about last week. They are an amazing animal and they have a burning desire to procreate. They do. You can't slow them down. They want to. It's pretty crazy. Hey,
yeah.
do
I think
you?
if Hugh Hefner had not chosen the bunny, it would have been the Grunion probably. They're all over it. But yeah, those Grunion, they live about 5 years. So they come into shore and go out. They go through that process of coming in out of the water and digging in it's just an amazing process. Anywhere between 5 and 10 times over their life. So that is really phenomenal that they're able to do that. One of my buddies, he will, when he's collecting Grunion, especially back when you could get a lot of them, he would, when he get the females, he would have a little plastic cup and he would squeeze the eggs into the cup from the females and then put them in his bag, and then the milk from the males in the cup and put those back in his bag, and then he would swish it around, and at the end of his little trip of being at the beach there, he would just like dig a little hole in the sand and pour all that egg and milk in there and cover it up, hoping that was a whole new group of Grunion growing.
Saving the planet. Saving the
That's right.
planet.
One Grunion at a time.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And Jeanette, I remember those days going to the fire station and getting my license for my bike and cleaning off the swin right underneath right below the seat, making a nice spot to put that decal on. And you felt like you accomplished something. You got a license for your bicycle and you were like 11 years old. It was a phenomenal day in the life of a kid to get that license. And yeah,
Exactly.
they are a bitchin' animal. I'm glad you got to experience that, Jeanette. I think as we grow up, I think everybody needs to see it. Like Bill and I talked about last week, it is just an amazing event. And I know a lot of people go, oh, there's no such thing. And a lot of our spouses and our boyfriends and girlfriends spent a lot of time going down there to look for Grunion in the middle of the night, like the submarine races or the snipe hunt. But it's real and it does happen and it does occur. And it's pretty special to see it when you finally get to see it. So as we start to go out of the Grunion and then going into this worm thing, let me show you a picture and you can tell me about what we're looking at here, because you sent me a handful of pictures and I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. So what are
Yeah,
these?
well, one thing about worms and about crabs is that the doctor has medicine for those now.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Good.
that was a joke.
That was a
So
good.
so it's something to remember about worms is that there are over 3,000 varieties of worms in the marine environment. So worms are a really big part of the diet of many fish. And there are worms found on land, as earthworms and night crawlers and red worms and all of those things. There are worms found in the surf. There are worms found over Catalina Island, and there are worms found at 4,000 feet deep. So there are 3,000 variety of worms that are all over, and it's one of the best baits to use in surf fishing. But what's really unusual is sandworms that live at the beach. And I think most of you have probably never even seen one or even know that they really even exist there. They have a symbiotic relationship with Grunion. And the two of them are, both combined or individually make for some really good bait. So these are sandworms we're looking at. When you look at the picture, you see some that are a kind of a reddish, an orangish color, a reddish color, and a green color. Well, the reason that they're different colors is that sandworms, they eat Grunion eggs. So sandworms are normally a greenish color, all the way from kind of a chartreuse to a kind of a Kelly green. So anywhere between those two. But whatever they feed on is what color they become for a while till it's all digested. So looking at the picture there in my yellow bait bucket, you can see a bunch of them that are orange and red, and those are the ones that are eating the Grunion eggs. And then once they digest all of those eggs, they'll turn right back into that kind of that burnt red, brick red type of color again. So those are sandworms. They work really good for bait. Where those sandworms come from is at the high tide mark. So what will happen is the Grunion will come in at high tide twice a month, full moon and new moon. They'll lay their eggs up in that sand at really almost the highest part of the high tide mark. Won't be above that where the sand is dry, so don't get mistaken with that. It'll still be where you can tell that it's been wet before. And they will be about 12 to 18 inches down. The best way to catch them is to go, look up the beach away from the ocean. So you got a berm that goes up, find out where that high tide mark is, where it's kind of the highest high tide. Dig down there so you create your own little cliff right there. And then, as I said, you want to dig down about 1 to 2 feet, move all the sand from the bottom away. That leaves a cliff that goes straight down. And what will happen is you'll see like one of their tails as they move, and you grab that tail and you slowly pull it backwards. If you pull it too fast, they'll break in half. So just slowly pull it backwards and they will slide right out of that sand. One thing to remember about these sandworms is that they travel through the sand at about 5 miles an hour. They're very, very fast.
Way.
Yeah, so it's
Wow.
not like a sand crab or a clam, for example, where you dig it up and it's right there and you can just grab it. Normally, as you're digging, you might see 2 or 3 of their tails go by and disappear into the sand. So, be aware of that. And as I said, the best way to do is like create a little cliff in front of you that's maybe 3 feet long and 1 to 2 feet high, and take away 4 inches of that at a time. That will expose their tails, and then you can slowly pull them out and the whole thing will come out of the sand, and then you can drop it in your bait bucket and they're ready to be used for bait.
Is that what this is?
That's a bloodworm. So
okay.
surf
Go back
fishing,
to-
we would commonly use bloodworms, lugworms, and sandworms. And there's a couple different varieties. There's like a real red one, very, very bright red. And then there's these ones we just looked at. The story about bloodworms is bloodworms have been the #1 surf fishing bait for as long as anybody can remember. I would say back in the 20s, probably. My dad used to fish them in the 30s. And they're very popular, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And you could probably pick them up for, they were like $6.99 a dozen back then. I think when I was a kid, they're probably $2 a dozen. But like, let's say 15 years ago, $6.99. And then if everybody remembers that movie, I can't remember it. Remember about the fisherman in the storm. When that giant storm came up the East Coast, it wiped out all of the estuaries that were all up in the Nantucket, Boston, up in that zone, which is where they got most of these bloodworms from. They would dig them up in these inner marsh estuary areas, and then they would ship them out all across the country. Well, when those got washed away or diminished, they went from like $6.99 a dozen to like $35 a dozen, and nobody was going to buy bait at $35 a dozen. So the Koreans came up with the lugworm. And so the lugworm, that's the picture that's got the 2 different colors of lugworms. Those were, and that's a natural worm. There you go. That's a natural worm that they actually can grow in huge numbers in captivity. They grow them in these big nets, and they're in like these square cinder block ponds, which are, each pond is about half the size of a house, let's say, and they've got a giant field of them. There's probably 400 or 500 of these ponds, and then they have a big net that goes in the bottom of the pond, and they grow on top of this net, and then they just lift it up, and then they process them, and then they come over to LAX every Thursday, and then the distributor, there's basically 2 distributors in California, come and pick them up, and they distribute them to all of the different tackle shops. because they can grow these worms themselves, they can make them basically any color they want. So they've had red ones, orange ones, green ones, green probably working the best of all of them. And these are like 18 for like $6.99 or $7.99. They're much less expensive. They're not as hardy as the bloodworm. They work about as well as it does. Maybe the bloodworm works 10% better, but they're a very effective bait. They're very easy to take care of. You can take them down to the beach, go fishing. Let's say you use 10 of them, you got 8 left. As long as it didn't get too hot in your bait holder, your pocket, wherever you had them, take them home, put them in the refrigerator. They'll live a couple more weeks. So the lugworm took the place of the bloodworm. And although we still have some bloodworms around, they are about twice as expensive as these lugworms are.
Do these things bite?
These things, they all 3 of those varieties, they have these little pinchers that bite. These have very small pinchers. Although they will kind of grab a hold of you, they can't puncture your skin whatsoever, which is possible with the bloodworm. The bloodworm can puncture your skin. The thing about the bloodworm and other worms that are like it, for example, if you want to find bloodworms and worms that are similar to them, you can find them in the Santa Ana River. Is a place where they occur, right in the brackish area where the saltwater meets the fresh water. A lot of times they look just like the bloodworm here, but they have like 100 little legs on each side of them. They're almost like kind of similar to these, how they have these variegated, they look like little legs on the side. You'll find those same ones in the Santa Ana River. Now, I learned a lesson there a couple of years ago. I was down there getting ghost shrimp and worms and clams and stuff. And I had found one of these big worms, and I always save them and use them for bait in the surf. They work really good. And the thing clamped onto my finger, and I let it just kind of hang on my finger there while I was fooling around with my bait catcher and stuff. And it really penetrated my skin, and it hurt. And so I pulled it off of there. Well, in a couple of minutes, my finger became numb. And then within 15 minutes, my entire arm was numb for about 45 minutes. I was getting kind of worried there. And the reason for that is that there is a neurotoxin in their fangs, which is very similar to the neurotoxin that you find in stingrays. And so they will clamp onto you, they'll bite you, they'll inject that neurotoxin into you. And then when you try to wash the sand or the mud off your fingers, because you've been picking through ghost shrimp or whatever, by putting your hand down in that cold water, the colder the water, the more the neurotoxin is activated. So the trick on that is if you step on a sea urchin, you have a worm, like one of these worms we find that live in California, bite you and your hand or your arm goes numb, is you want to soak it in the hottest water that you can put your extremity in, and it will go away in a matter of seconds.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. That's good to know. That's why we want to pee on it, right? So now we're back to what? Sandworms?
That's right. There's more sandworms. Those are in my hand in the backyard there. And you can see, once again, multicolored, but most of them are kind of getting back to that green color once they have digested all those eggs.
So if you were going to use the worm that you have in your hand there, which one are you going with, the green one or the orange one?
I'm probably going with whatever one I pull out of there first. I don't really think that the fish has really is concerned about the color so much. Although the orange might be a little bit more, close to so many other things that are orange in their world. But I think what is more important is the size of the bait, the action of the bait, and the fact that the person has correctly hooked the bait. And for those of you who want to learn how to hook worms correctly, because we use the entire worm, we never cut the worm in half. You can go to my YouTube channel and you can look up my, Bill Varney surf fishing on YouTube and look under how to hook a worm. And there's all the detail you'll ever need to know about that. But the reason we use the whole worm is that, when we go lake fishing, we go trout fishing, we get a big night crawler. We cut it into like 3 pieces, because it's so big. And then we put one of those pieces on our hook and we throw it out. A lake has very little current, if any current at all. It's very calm. And you know how often you'll go to a lake and it's really clear and they see the fish swimming around. It's beautiful. Well, the surf is exactly the opposite of that. with all the waves crashing and the water moving and the current and all that going on, if I was to take one of those worms and cut it in half and put it on a hook and throw it out there, all of the goodness on the inside of it, all the juices and all the good stuff the fish love would just wash out with that current, and it would just be a piece of skin on my hook. So we use the entire worm, and because we do, that's, went anywhere between 1 and 3 fish on each one of those worms.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you cut them up like we do when we're trout fishing? But I guess not. Okay.
Nope.
There's going to be a worm we're going to show here at the second half of the show, though, that you might want to cut. I don't know. It's kind of a big worm, but real quick, I want you guys to see this video. It's Okuma Wednesday. Listen to John Bretta real quick. This is a great reel for fishing in the surf.
Hey guys, this is John Bretza, Director of Product Development for Okuma Fishing Tackle. What we have here is an addition to the Tesoro spinning reel line. This is a new 6,000 size that all you've been waiting for. Great reel for all those guys down in the southeast or the northeast that want to go target, big fish on lighter tackle. This 6,000 size holds 290 yards of 30-pound braid or 195 yards of 50-pound braid. It's packed with features. It's all Lumalite construction, body, side plate, and rotor. It's got the IPX7 full waterproof body, so if this thing gets submerged, you're gonna have no issues at all with it fishing. As far as drag system, it features a carbonite drag system with a maximum 33 pounds of drag pressure, so a tremendous drag output. So say you're gonna take this and fish small, medium-sized tarpon, you're gonna have pulling power with this reel. The best feature it has is it has Okuma's new flight drive system. So that's gonna give you that really smooth operation so it feels good all day long when you're on the water. And one of the things when you're fishing braided line, there's a lot of stress placed on any reel regardless of brand or manufacturer. The one thing that we equipped this reel to make the Tesoro different is that instead of a stainless steel spool shaft, we used a titanium spool shaft. So this thing's super strong, super durable, but it's also something that's never gonna corrode. This little 6,000 size reel has a dual anti-reverse, and it's all machine cut gearing, machine cut brass main gear and penny gear. The Tesoro 6000 has a 6.2 to 1 gear ratio, and that has 41.3 inches of line pickup. The entire reel weighs in at only 15.8 ounces. This reel is going to retail for $359. And one thing that's unique about this reel that's different than the larger Tesoros is that when you flip that bail over and you turn the handle, the bail's gonna automatically engage. On the larger sizes, most anglers don't want that feature, but this is more universal for live baiting and casting and jigging, so we put that feature into this 6,000 size. If you wanna find out more information on the new Tesoro 6000, check it out at okumafishingusa.com or go see it at a local retailer near you.
And there you go, gang. That pretty much covers everything you want to know about that reel. But Bill, what in the holy heck is this thing? What did you send me a picture of?
That's an old hot dog I found under my seat after we had gone to Del Taco.
Yeah, I was going to say, or something like that. I'm like, we might get banned for this picture.
Their Wiener Schnitzel special.
Oh my goodness.
That's an Innkeeper worm. So
and I'm going to put that on my hook.
Well, hang on. So what is an Innkeeper worm? Well, when we were talking about those bloodworms, and once again, those bloodworms, they occur anywhere you have a marine environment. You're going to find them at Mag Bay all the way to probably Anchorage. And then it's along the eastern seaboard. They're really all over. There's quite a few of them. If you're looking here in California, inside of Newport Harbor, I think there's more there, and probably Huntington Harbor and the back of LA Harbor than anywhere else. But how they operate is that they're like the major domo of the bloodworm, and so they will. And I don't. To be honest with you, I don't understand all of the biological science behind them, but they will be like a plug in the main hole that goes down to the bed, like a well, where all of the bloodworms themselves are living and breeding and so forth. And so you will find these, and the way that you'll find them is at a low tide inside of a harbor area. You'll see a fairly large hole, maybe about the size of a quarter. and they will be spitting sand out of that hole as they sift through water in order to find food. And you can pull them out, and they are really about the size of a hot dog, sometimes a little bit wider in circumference. And you can either use that as a whole bait, where you just put probably a number 1 Gamakatsu 50409 through the top of them and throw them out there. You don't really need a sinker on them, and they're best fished in harbors rather than out in the open surf, because they don't occur out in the open surf. They're almost always found inside a harbor, an estuary, a bay, somewhere where we have a mud sand combination. But they have caught some gigantic corbina over the years. And then other people will strip them. So they'll cut them into basically 4 long pieces, cut it in half again in long, and put those long strips on their line and use that as bait inside the harbor. So those are Innkeeper worms, and those have been a secret of fishing and catching the largest corbina and spot fin inside of harbors, really forever, for the last 100 years, I would say. And very few people know of them, have seen them. If you look at that one on the right-hand side of it on your screen, you can barely see it, but at the very top of it are those little pinchers or little teeth that you find also on the bloodworm. These guys they've got these pinchers that are about 1 inch long. They can really get you, but they are fantastic baits in the harbors and the bays and the estuaries.
Matt Martin asked a good question. Will Bill be given game plans to members? What's going to happen here, gang, is Bill is putting together a plethora of videos to add to the website. There's going to be Bill's Corner, which is going to be all surf fishing. It's going to be a small buy-in to get involved with it. But yes, he's going to be giving game plans. He's going to be doing plenty of stuff to keep you involved, to make sure that you have the best opportunity when you go surf fishing. So he's going to follow along with what we're doing at Your Saltwater Guide. He's going to be on Your Saltwater Guide. But in order to make it fair for Bill to give us all the information that Bill has, there's going to be a little up fee, Matt. So in order to get involved, you're going to pay a little bit of extra. Bill and I haven't decided what it's going to be, but I guarantee you, whatever it is, it's going to be worth it, because you're going to get to talk to Bill. That's the difference here from our website compared to any other website out there. You get to talk to us. You get to talk to me. You get to talk to Justin. You get to talk to Al. You get to talk to Sonny. You get to talk to Pablo. You're going to get to talk to Bill. But Bill's putting together, this is a new thing. Bill's kind of an old guy like me, so this is a new thing for Bill to get involved in. He wants to be in 100%. That's why he's on the show every Wednesday. So he's going to put together the best plan possible for Bill's time, because at the end of the day, gang, it's all about time. So just understand that. So Bill will put together the best plan he can put together for you, and he's going to try to figure out what it's worth for Bill to do that for you. But we will make sure that you all get in on it. Those of you that are already members or lifetime members, we'll get you a smoking little deal. Don't worry. We'll get you all involved. We're not going to leave out the founding members of the website, all 4,926 of you today. You're going to be a part of it. But as Bill builds this bigger, better, what is it? Build back better? That's what Bill's going to be doing on the website. Build back better. Hopefully,
fish back better.
Than the last time. But yeah, he's going to be involved. Let me pull down this picture of this thing, because I don't even like the way it looks, let alone am I touching it. I don't know.
It's a creepy looking thing.
And
yeah, I'm so thankful. Really, I'm so thankful, Dave, that you asked me to join you and to help you. And first of all, it's just such an awesome forum to go, and so easy for all of us to go out and get our information out, talk among ourselves, get questions, get answers, learn something. As I said before, I learned just as much from you guys as you guys learned from me. So it's a real symbiotic relationship. But Dave and I talked about this, and although I've really not told Dave yet, I guess I'll tell everybody now what my plan is. Yeah, we're old, it takes us longer to do things than we had it done in our 20s, probably would have had it done by now. But when I joined Saltwater Guide, and then we have this other module for you to enjoy, we are going to have on there videos. So I am working on making a video about just about everything I could ever figure out in surf fishing. Those videos are going to be like bubblegum. You'll be able to chew them. They'll have delicious flavor, but before you know it, the flavor will be gone and you'll want more. So when that happens, you'll be able to go onto my site. You'll have a special password there, and you'll be able to scroll through and read over 100 articles that I've published. I have about 400 published articles. So starting out, there'll be about 100 on there on every subject about how to find halibut in the surf, how to catch halibut, perch fishing, places to go, road trips for surf fishing, how to find fish on the beach, how to catch baits, what different baits there are, how to hook them, all of those things. So all of that stuff's going to be on there. All of my chapters of my book are going to be on there. So you won't, not only will you, I would love for you to buy my book, but if you don't have it, you'll be able to go right on there and you'll be able to go to a specific chapter and read about baits or lures or whatever. There'll also be tutorials on how to do things like building a ghost shrimp pump, things like that. In addition to that, you'll have personal contact with me like you have with Dave. You'll be able to call me, send me an email, whether it's I have a question about something or whether it's, hey, I'm going down to, Seal Beach this weekend, or I'm going down to Hermosa or Santa Monica to go fishing tomorrow. What suggestions do you have? I'll be able to say, hey, I got 3 reports this week. This is what they're catching. This is what they're using. So that's going to be really helpful for you. There's another thing we're going to add to that, which is really going to be exciting, is that you will be invited. Everybody who's on this system will be invited for free to all of my surf fishing clinics on the beach. So you'll be able to come right down to the beach with us. We spend about 20 minutes going over a seminar of how to rig up correctly. And then we spend 2 or 3 hours right on the sand, fishing right next to you. Any questions you have about surf fishing, we're answering them right on the sand. So I walk up to you and you say, hey, Bill, what am I looking for? We can stand there for 20 minutes and talk exactly about what you want to find on the beach. And then in addition to that, we're going to have one clinic that is just for the members. So it'll be a smaller group just for the members, and we'll have, awards and things like that to give away. That'll be fun. And then last but not least, Dave, just like you, we'll have our Thursday evening game plan. So all week long, I will collect information on where are the fish, what are they catching, what are the tides like, wind, crowds, areas, all the different information that we need, give you that game plan on Thursday night. It'll put you in a position on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to get down on the sand and catch some fish. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm working on it. I think we're going to be able to introduce it right at the beginning of June would be my guess.
And gang, you know why we do this? And people go, oh, Dave, you're just doing this for money. No, listen, I'm doing okay. I'm going to be all right, whether the website makes it or not. I promise you, folks. I get 30 million views a month. I'm going to be okay today. Here's why we're doing this. Here's why we're sharing all of our inner information with you, and why we're allowing you to call us, and why we're allowing you to do all this. I don't know if you guys have paid attention to my shows in the last year anyway, with Wayne Coda coming on here, Bill being on here every Wednesday. We are under attack, and from every angle. They do not want you to fish in California, period, end of story. So if Bill and I and Justin and Pablo and Al and those of us that understand what it's going to take to keep this open, if we don't share our information, then you guys aren't going to be excited about going fishing. Bill knows that he watches and he reads all of your guys' reports on the community. He sees what's going on. We are absolutely changing people's lives. We have so many people that are super excited now, Bill, about fishing. And I know you're right there with me. We've got to get everybody involved. We've got to get everybody excited. We just launched a new part of the website. I don't know if you saw it yet, Bill, but Ryland's Corner. Now we have a young man, 11 years old, 9 years old, who is making videos to get more children involved, because kids aren't going to watch you and me, Bill. We're flipping old men. They're like, change the channel. I don't want to watch, but they're going to watch Ryland. They're going to watch Ryland teaching them how to cast, teaching them how to cut their bait, teaching them how to fish on the dock with his Oh my God, he's the cutest guy in the world. He's the cutest young man in the world, and he has a great message, and he's got a phenomenal work ethic at his age. And we're just trying to get you all involved because we do not want to live in a world where we can't go fishing. Bill or I, if we found out tomorrow morning we couldn't fish, I don't know if we're going to be here much longer. Because you take that away from us, there's not much. I mean, Bill just told you when the show started about all the places he's going this year, and every one of them revolves around fishing. Everything, we go on vacation, we go fake. You and I, we're weirdos, and we drag our wives with us, but we're going fishing destinations, vacation. Yeah, it looks cool, but can we fish? We don't want to live in that world, gang. So if you think that we're just doing this for money, you're sadly mistaken. We bring on the greatest people we can possibly bring on, and we always start everyone's story out with, how did you get into fishing? And it all happened because somebody took us fishing when we were little. And a lot of us, it saved our lives. Let's be honest. Fishing saved our lives. We could have been, well, some of us were bad kids, but fishing saved our lives. And fishing can save the children's lives today, and fishing can save you. And Jeanette, when your husband stood up at the PCS show and made that phenomenal speech, I firmly in my heart believed every word he said, because, gang, it absolutely does matter. When you go fishing, when you're out on the boat or when you're out on the beach and your line's in the water, for some reason, everything stops. The only thing you're thinking about is my bait in the position where it's going to get a bite? And all that other garbage leaves. It just splits. For some reason, it leaves your head, and all you're thinking about is, I need a bite. I got to get a bite. And I'm telling you, gang, that's why we're doing this. And if you want to be in the greatest community ever built for fishermen, you got to check out your saltwater guide. You want to know what we're doing? Don't be afraid. Don't sit on the sidelines. Call me, 949-374-0786. I'll give you a free look. There's no way for me to get in your bank account because you called me. You're going to get to look at the website. You're going to see if the community is real. We have thousands of people on there that have left reports of the most killer fish that they've ever caught. If you look at the last 3 days, the halibut fishing and the rockfish fishing, it's just been insane. One of our really good friends, Bill, that really didn't know anything about fishing, had 3 fish yesterday up to 44-inch halibut. 3 halibut legal yesterday. And last year, he never caught one. He got 3, and the biggest one's 44 inches. The thing's just a slob. Well, that's what we're doing here, gang. That's why Bill Varney's involved. And he saw the power when he went to the Bard Hall show. How many people came up to you and asked for the free stuff because they had a shirt on?
Quite a few. To be honest, I was surprised, not in a negative way, in a good way, but I was like, wow, Dave gets around.
Yeah, we're kind of trying to change the atmosphere, the whole fishing thing. I wish more and more of the people that do it for a living would get more involved with turning on this community, because they're taking it away fast. And then what happened on April 1st, we kind of talked about it, but man, it's going to make it really hard now for the operators of the sport fishing industry. And my sister, she employs about 60 people, and they just raised that minimum wage I know, at the fast food center. Well, let me tell you something, gang. If the guy at the fast food place is getting $20 an hour and your deckhand's getting $16 an hour, there's a huge disconnect there, and the deckhands aren't coming. So it affects every single person. So at the end of the day, gang, we're going to talk about CCA here for a few minutes. You got to get involved. We got to keep fishing open, and you got to think, what's going on right now in the United States of America? What is going on? Do you like what's going on? Then keep voting for who you're voting for. If you're not enjoying this and you don't like these closures getting crammed down our throats, you may want to change who you. And I know you all vote party. I know that, and I'm not going to change who you vote for. I'm not going to ever ask you to change who you vote for. But if you're getting what you think you should be getting, then keep doing what you're doing. It's the same thing we talk about in AA. The definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing, expecting something different to happen. Gang, we got to we got to remove heads from rectum. We got to stop this closure thing. It's scary. It is super scary what's going on. We had Wayne on here. I don't know if you saw the show, Bill, but
Yes, I did. Yeah.
It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy what he has to put up with every single day out there, just trying to make it so you and I can go fishing. And I know you're a board member, and I know you're involved big time, and you give back crazy. Hey, tell everybody what you get paid by being a board member.
Nothing. I occasionally get a thank you. You know, Dave, back in probably about 5 years ago, I was down at the national meeting, which is in Houston, Texas. And when you have the national meeting, all of the directors like Wayne come in, and some of the executive board members, but mostly the directors come in from back then. We had 20, I think we had 21 states back then. Now there's more that have chapters. And so they asked each one of the directors from each one of the states to stand up and talk about, like, politically, basically, or, you know, issue wise, what was going on in their state. So, like, you know, Tennessee would get up and say, oh, this is what's going on. And Louisiana would say, this is what's going on. Florida would say this, and blah, blah. Well, it got to be Wayne's turn. I mean, there were like 25 major things going on at once in California, where the other states had maybe one or two issues in the entire state. And that's the thing about California. It's like machine gun fire. This stuff, all of these crazy ideas about whether it's offshore wind farms, closing areas, sanctuaries, national sanctuaries, all of these different things, that de facto closures that they talk about, limits on rockfish, all of this stuff comes by the dozens down from Sacramento. And it is a full-time job for Wayne, for Chris, for Tony, and all 30 of the board members just to keep up with what is coming down the pipe, let alone fighting the stuff. So it is really amazing. California's amazing. And I'm telling you, you know, like, once again, like Dave says, like, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm not going to be political here and blah, blah, blah. But if you like what's going on in California, you know, with wind farms and closures and not being able to go do the fishing and just the enjoyment of the outside that you used to do, then vote for Gavin Newsom for president, because I guarantee you that the same junk that comes down in California out in the ocean, forget all the stuff that happens on land, is going to happen around the country if he becomes our president, because that's what he wants. For some reason, he thinks that that's what the people want. And he is a guy that's willing to go out on national television and say that, I'm a fisherman, I love fishing too. And I have yet to see a picture of him with a fishing rod or a fish or going fishing. So, you know, you're going to get what you vote for. That's just the bottom line.
And I know you guys hate when we go political, but unfortunately, fishing is super political now. It is. So we need all of you to help us. And what it takes is, it takes money. So please, the QR code's up on the screen. Get involved with ccacalifornia.org. If you're listening, driving in your car, I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for. That's the last, like Dana White says, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just telling you, if you're sick and tired of what's going on, you may want to change what you're voting for. It's up to you. I don't really know why we even have to talk about it, because I grew up in California when everything was just unbelievable. It was the most bitchinest place to grow up as a kid. It was absolutely spectacular. It was a phenomenal place to jump on your bike and go ride down to the beach and go fish all day, or jump on your bike and go ride down the pier and go fish all day, or go to the harbor and do all these things that you can't do anymore. I don't understand it, but I do know why it's happening. I'm crystal clear on that. I got a very, very clear look at why it's happening, gang. And if you don't think that's why it's happening, once again, you can give me a call at 949-374-0786. I had this conversation 2 days ago with a member. I didn't quite understand his logic. And when we got off the phone, I actually was able to talk to him, because that's the key. As people, we should be able to have conversations. And I want to have a conversation with all of you. I want to know why you think it's okay to close down fishing. I want to know why you think we don't need children fishing. I really want to have that conversation. I do, because this is so near and dear to my heart, and it affects my whole being and my family and everything that we have to do. Our whole life has been involved with taking people fishing. My dad started doing it in 1947. So we have a tiny bit of history about it, and it does really, really matter to me. So get involved or don't get involved. But if you're not involved, then maybe you shouldn't even be fishing, because you'd really got nothing to complain about. But
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the comments, can't read the name from here, but it says, vote for policy, not for the person you're told about. I cannot agree more about that. And that's how I have always voted, to be honest with you. Like, I will think about the issues, and I'll close my eyes and I'll say, okay, do I want people coming across the border into our US? Is that good? Or is it better if they don't come across the border? Well, and without permission. Well, in my mind, it would be better that they had permission. So that puts me in, that's my policy. You know, do I want certain people speaking at my children's school that maybe are not in the same idea that I am? No. So I'm going to vote against that. So yeah, look at the policy, make decisions based on policy, and vote for those people. My parents had always voted, well, I don't know exactly because I never saw their votes, but they were Republicans. They had voted for Republicans. And so when I was a little kid, I came home from school, and JFK had been assassinated. And my mother was in front of the TV, which was about this big and black and white in those days. And she was crying. And I asked her why she was crying. I think I was in first grade. And she said that our president had been murdered. And I said, oh my gosh, what happened? And she explained it to me. And she said, he was somebody that I voted for. And I said, really? I thought you always voted for the other person. And she said, no, I voted for JFK because he was so good looking. So we've got to get away from voting for people because they're good looking, or they've got a lot of followers, or, you know, they got a cool car, or they got a bitchin' house, or they sing good songs, or whatever. And we have to do exactly what that comment said, is concentrate on policy. Like, what is the best policy for us as individuals and for our community, and then vote based on that.
Yeah, and all the other things don't, in my world, they don't even really matter. If I can't fish, it doesn't even matter anymore. It just doesn't. If we can't fish, if I can't take my grandkids fishing, then there's really no reason for Captain Dave to hang out on this big ball anymore. This is me, though. That's just the way I think. I'm not telling any of you how to think, but man, if you're watching this show, I know where you're thinking, and we gotta stand up. It's time. I can't handle any more closures. I really can't. I know we're going to fish around these closures that are happening right now because we're good fishermen, and the industry's got a bunch of really good people involved in it, but it's getting to the point. I don't know how much longer this industry can take. And this $20 an hour thing is just with all the other crap going on right now in our industry, it's going to be very, very hard to keep a crew on a boat this year. If you stop, and I know you're all thinking about your business, but if you stop and you think about, you want to get on any sport boat, you name one. You want to get on that sport boat, and the captain, he's got to get paid more now because the kid at McDonald's is making 50 grand a year. The captain of the sport boat has to get paid more. The deckhand has to get paid more. The cook has to get paid more. The guy selling the tickets in the office everybody has to get paid more now that we made a law that the guy at McDonald's gets $20 an hour, gang. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And no one played the tape all the way through. Or like Jeanette said, we really didn't even get to vote on it. It just happened. It just whammo. It just happened. But it's a trickle down effect. Like, I can't even imagine. We can't fish here. We can't fish there. We can't do this. Now it's going to be impossible to keep anybody working. We can't afford it. You can't afford another hike on the ticket to go on the Dana Pride or the Freelance or the Royal Polaris. I mean, we already know it's a cost a fortune, but you got to look all the way, gang. It's crazy. So please get involved with CCA California.
Yeah. And instead of having 2 deckhands, you're going to have 1 deckhand. You know, they're just not going to be able to afford. I mean, you're going to see this in a lot of places where they won't be able to afford it. In 1977, man, that was a long time ago, I worked for McDonald's. I used to work at McDonald's in 1977 when I first went to college. And so I looked it up the other day. I was making $2.35 an hour. So when I had that job, first of all, I never looked at that job like, oh, this is my career. Someday I'm going to be the manager of a McDonald's. That was definitely not in the cards. And the other thing is that I had mentioned that to my wife, and she said, you know, there's been a lot of inflation. Look how much bread is now, or popcorn, or gas, or whatever. And so I did the math, you know, and if the inflation on gasoline was the same as on what I earned at McDonald's versus what they're paying today, you'd be paying over $10 a gallon for gas. So, you know, this thing about all of this inflation being caused, and the cost of homes being so much more now, and interest rates being so high and all that, that's what drives the $20 an hour. And if we could control all of those other things, which we can, and which we should have been able to, then we wouldn't be in the boat we're in today. But with that said, you know, that's why we're anglers. That's why we love to go down fishing on the beach or in a lake or stream or out in the boat or long range, because it takes our mind off of all of this stuff. And you know, I think we're really seeing, like you were saying earlier, Dave, you know, the conditions are really beginning to turn around now. We didn't have like that overwhelming cold winter that turned the water over so much. In the last, I would say, couple, 3 weeks now, we've had the water turnover. It was about 57 degrees today up in Santa Barbara, up in the harbor, and it was about 59 down in San Diego. So that is a couple degrees cooler than it was, let's say, 2 weeks ago. I think in this month, it's a traditionally windy month. So we're going to see a little bit of rain coming up here on Thursday, Friday. We can maybe see a little Sunday into Monday. And it does look like there's 2 more storms after that coming into California in the middle of April, and then one toward the end of April. But they look like they're really mild storms. And so as long as there's not too much wind, we're going to see a little bit of wind here on Thursday and Friday, probably 30 knots out there. Which is going to turn over the water a bit. But I think once we get most of that behind us, if we don't get any big wind events, the water's going to warm up, and the sand crabs are going to come up to the surface, and it will be full on out there for everything long range to fishing right on the beach.
So we kind of got off on this political thing. I know a lot of people are staying with us, and I appreciate that. I want to go back to this worm thing, Bill. We're going to go over today. Mm-hmm. We're going to go a little bit over. I want to go back to this worm thing because I don't know how to hook them. And I know none of the people that are watching. So I'm going to take this worm, and I saw it's kind of rigged up. Did you thread the hook down like a rubber lure kind of thing?
I did. So that's a bloodworm, of course. And let me reach back here behind my cat. So when I'm fishing a worm, normally I'm going to fish a long hook. I love to use these Mustad Sproat hooks, SPROAT, or a Gamakatsu worm hook. So this is what they look like. And if you want to just take that down for a second.
Yeah. Let me get it down.
Okay. So this is what the Mustad worm hook looks like. And what makes this hook different, here's one by itself, get that at the right angle, is that it's a long shank, as you can see, and it's a perfectly J-shaped hook. So if you were to go to the tackle shop and look for this hook, and you said to the guy, oh, I need a bait hook, to go surf fishing, they give you a bait holder hook that looks just like this, with the exception of it's not a perfect J shape. The eye of the hook is offset from the tip of the hook. It's almost like they took a pair of pliers here on this end, one on the eye, they turn them in opposite directions, so it has a little turn in the hook. You never want to fish with a hook like that. You always want to fish in the surf with a perfectly J-shaped hook like this with no turn in it. Because if the hook has a little turn in it, when you put your bait on, your bait will have a slight turn in your bait. And as you're retrieving it towards shore, remember you have all this current going on in there, Yeah, the thing will spin in a circle. So you need that perfectly J shape. So we take these long shank hooks, and then we take the entire worm, and I would take the hook like this if the worm was my finger, and go right down through the mouth of that worm, feed the worm up the hook, and then I'm going to feed the worm like 3 or 4 inches like this up onto my line. So the worm ahead of the worm is really up here, and the tail is down here. I'm only going to leave about 1 to 2 inches below the hook. If I was to put the worm on, and let's say the worm head ended here and the tail was this long, first fish that came by, go right below the hook and bite that whole tail off. So you're going to leave about 1 to 2 inches below the hook. The rest is going to be on your line. They're going to come, you're going to get a bite. They're going to bite the bottom off, or you get the fish and pull it in, take the fish off, pull the worm down, put another inch below the hook, and you can catch 2, 3, 4 fish on the same worm.
Okay. And are you going to do the same thing with those, the worms with all the feet on them? What do you call those things?
Yes, the
These guys?
bloodworms, the lugworms, every kind of worm you're going to hook the same way.
You're going to
Bloodworm,
thread them down there.
lugworm, exactly.
Okay.
You're going to thread them. Now, what would you thread in addition to that? That looks like a worm, acts like a worm, swims like a worm. Everybody says to me, you know, like, I'm fishing mussel, you know, like, how do you keep that stuff on the hook? Like I take dental floss and I wrap it around there. My grandpa gave me this orange string. I put that on there. And man, that's a lot of work. If you want to use a mussel and you want to be effective with a mussel and you want to catch anything from a big halibut to a little tiny perch, go out and find mussels on the jetties that are outside the harbor, because we have mussels inside the harbor. We got them outside the harbor. Those that are inside the harbor are generally much smaller than the ones that are outside. They get pounded by the surf, so they get big and strong and stuff. Open that mussel up and you'll see a big lip that goes around on the top and the bottom of it. Don't even think about all the soft guts on the inside. Peel off that lip. It'll be about this long. It'll look just like an orange and brown worm. Feed that thing up the hook just like it's a lugworm, a bloodworm, or a sandworm, and cast that thing out and slowly retrieve it toward shore. The tail of that thing is whipping around. It's irresistible. And then, of course, it's orange and brown. It's all of the natural colors that occur in the area where the fish live. So when they see it go by, not only does it have the action of what lives where they feed, all those, and you'll find out the most effective way to fish mussel.
Well, those are phenomenal tips. And then what size? You probably said it, but what size is that hook? Size
I normally
4,
fish a number 2.
2?
Number 2 is number 4 or number 2. Either one of those sizes is fine. And these are black non-anodized hooks, which means that if that thing was to get down in that fish's throat and you want to let it go, just cut off your line as close as you can to the eye. And this thing, because remember, it has no zinc on it, has no plating of any kind on it, 2 or 3 days, it'll rust and break out. It'll be gone in no time. Won't hurt the fish at all. You know, you notice when you see fish that come out of the ocean, it's very rare that you see one that's got an infection. Like, how many times do you walk on the pier? Huntington Beach is a good example, and see people with infections, with cuts and bruises and things like that. You see them all the time on land. You hardly ever see it in fish. Now, why is that? Because other fish bite them and they rub up against stuff. It's because there's so much salt and iodine in salt water that it acts as a natural astringent to keep them from getting any or very few, if any, infections. And so that's what's so great about these hooks is they just rust out and they either goes through their system or back out through their gills in their mouth, whatever's left of that steel, and it's gone. It doesn't hurt them at all.
Well, that is what I told my kids forever when they were little. When they'd get scratched or something, just hold your hand in the bait tank for a while. It'll be okay. Dad's been doing it that way forever. It worked out really well for me for my whole life. So I understand that. Stu had a great comment. Surf fishing for the last 35 years. Wednesday's shows with Bill are his favorite.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of people like listening to you, Bill. You're so knowledgeable about all this stuff. And then if we go down that other trail, we get a lot of knowledge over there too that we're not all aware of. And that windmill thing is becoming a huge thing on the East Coast. Everybody's now waking up and understanding how horrible it is for the environment. If you go onto social media, you'll see that all the famous fishermen back east, the wicked tuna guys, everybody, they're all up in arms now. They're trying to understand all these northern right whales that were so protected for so long are now just unbelievably dying. And we know exactly why. Everyone knows why, but they won't talk about it. And we are underway to building the most unbelievably gigantic, like Wayne was saying on Friday, we are full speed involved in building this gigantic windmill factory in Southern California and Central California, which is just going to devastate. So maybe next week we'll talk a little bit more about windmills. I've been reading about it like every day, Bill. It's just so sad what they're trying to do to the. And I can't even imagine what the poor ocean's going to look like in another 10 years as they plant all this garbage in the middle of the ocean. And there's not going to be any money to keep these things going. I don't know if you can see what's going on, but no one's got any money, but they're going to plant these things out there and no one's going to be able to take care of them. It's just going to be the biggest mess you've ever seen, gang. No one plays the tape all the way through. Just like they didn't play the tape all the way through with these closures with the MLPs. And now they want us to go in there and get the sea urchins out. And we're like, no, we're not going to go get the sea urchins because you told us we can't fish there. We're not going to fish there. Sorry, you guys built this problem. You didn't play the tape all the way. They're like, where's the kelp forest? The fishermen aren't there anymore. They should have. Well, we weren't the problem, you ding-dongs. The sea urchin was the problem, and we were harvesting the living bejesus out of them, and the kelp was thriving like you can't even believe. Now they want us to go back in there. They want commercial divers to go in and take care of the sea urchins. Well, only if we get to fish there, and they won't let us.
And you know what's ironic about that whole thing is that in order for the Department of Fish and Wildlife or the Fish and Game Commission to have either commercial divers or diving clubs who also do this to go in there, they need a special permit. So they didn't put any provisions in the MPA process for things like this to come up and have a way to quickly go about. Like, for example, if a war started and we said, well, we need to talk about it and get a permit, and it'll be a year before we can protect ourselves, we'd all be gone in that year. Well, this is what they've done in the MPA process. So they said to the urchin, this huge club in Northern California of divers came forward and said, we have done it before. You know, we got all of our equipment, our hammers, we got everything we need, send us in. And they said, we can't do that because you need a special permit. So the special permit means, that's another word for bureaucracy, which means that they need to have like 5 or 6 or 8 meetings. They need to discuss it and they need to vote on it. And it takes literally months. It took for the special permit that they have today for testing crab pot ground gear, they call it. Took over a year to get that special permit. So yeah, they didn't even come up with a way to have a legitimate process that was quick to take care of emergencies in the marine environment. So we've got to really hope that there isn't any emergencies. And like, as far as these right whales are concerned, prior to all these right whales dying and coming ashore, they were like the most healthy population on the eastern seaboard. I lived in Long Island for 2.5 years, and we would go down to Jones Beach. We could watch them at this time of year swim by. There wasn't one single whale in 2.5 years that ever came ashore anywhere on Long Island or New Jersey. And now there's been, 30 now. It's unbelievable how many there are and how much effort went into protecting them. And now they're unprotected, A, and B, nobody really cares. And then C, what's so tragic about it too, Dave, is that, and when I was a lifeguard for 8 years, we did this too. When they come up on the beach, you know, it's not like there's a ceremony for them or anybody feels sorry for them. They just send down a bulldozer or a front end loader and they dig a big hole and they drop them in the hole and they cover them with sand and they move on with their life. So it's really, really quite sad, you know. They don't make them available to the Native American tribes to use their meat and their blubber and their skin for all the things like coats and things that they so often had made prior to all of this protection of them. Although they just let them die and then bury them in the sand. So it really is a shame.
It's very sad. And they just made a report 2 days ago that they found an animal that's been extinct on the eastern seaboard forever. They just spotted the very first one. The California gray whale has a cousin that lives on the eastern seaport, and they just saw the very first one. And this has been an extinct animal. And now, like I'm not going to tell who I told, but unfortunately, here he is cruising up and down the coast over there, going through the minefield of, he's not going to make it. It's just so sad. And we're going to do that here on the West Coast, and we're just going to take it. It's just going to be tragic. But the sea urchin thing, the kelp beds, gang, it's a real deal in Southern California. And Brett was talking, it's a real deal up in Monterey. It's a real deal. The kelp forest is a needed commodity in California. It is part of the whole ecosystem. But what they did when they closed the MLPs is they didn't even think. They didn't even think about any of this. They also closed a bunch of areas that you and I, Bill, paid for. A bunch of areas where the artificial reefs were dumped with our fishing money, our fishing licenses paid for the artificial reefs. And when they closed the MLPs, they closed the artificial reefs that we paid for. None of it made any sense. It's a tragedy. But the sea urchin thing is such a joke.
Yeah, it is a tragedy. And it has the amount of irony, in the management of California's oceans is, there's been a lot of good things, and Department of Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, they have done some really good things. For example, back in the 1950s and the 60s, there was a block, I say a block long, like a quarter mile by a quarter mile wide area right above King Harbor that was low income housing. They were almost like condos. They were apartments, and they overlooked the harbor, which back in the day, nobody wanted to live there. It wasn't like a valuable area of land, which is mind boggling. And all these people live there. These low income folks live there. Well, around 1970 or so, they decided that the land was worth money, and they were going to sell the land, and then that building giant building was going to be raised, and then they were going to build condos or homes or whatever they eventually put there. Well, when they did that, they wondered, where's all this, all the sinks and the toilets and the bathtubs. Remember back then, all that stuff was made out of cast iron, and it had porcelain on it. So what they did was they put them on these barges in King Harbor, and they took them outside the harbor, and they made the Redondo and the Hermosa artificial reefs. Those reefs, if you dive on them, are made out of hundreds and hundreds of toilets, sinks, and bathtubs. And you can think over all of the years what incredible fishing we had on those artificial reefs. Like because I grew up in that area, I could take you out there in my little aluminum boat any day of the week and get in the evening over by one of those reefs. And it was barracuda, bonita, sand bass, calico bass, halibut, excellent fishing there based on the toilets. So would they do that today? No, we can barely even talk them into putting in reefs nowadays, let alone piles of toilets out there. So to the whole now, it's really crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty, like I said, it's tragic. Thanks, Tim. I try to pay attention to everything everyone's saying. When I lean back, you guys lose my audio. So I'll try not to lean back. I'll keep trying to eat the mic. But yeah, gang, all Bill and I are trying to do is just let you know that we're being pretty much attacked from every angle. So please try to get involved with ccacalifornia.org. It's a super important thing. We just want to keep fishing. We just want, at least, I think I got maybe 30 more years on the planet. If everything goes right, I'd like to be able to fish for at least 20 more of those years. So After that, then free for all. You guys do whatever you want, close everything. Just give me 20 more years. That's all I'm asking for. 20 more years, gang. Get involved with ccacalifornia.org. Bill's going to be working diligently to get these videos and all this great stuff that he has planned for all of us at your Saltwater Guide Gang. And remember, you do not have to go pay to look at my website. I'll give you a free look. There's no reason for you. Oops, I leaned back again. There's no reason for you to not be involved. I'm giving you a free look. You can check it out, see if it's worth being a member. Go check out the community. The community is probably the very best part of the whole thing. I know getting all the information, where to fish, how to fish, what to fish is cool, but to be able to share what we're doing with each other in a positive atmosphere, there's nowhere else on the planet you can do that. All the other social media platforms are just full of dripping, gnarly negativity. If you want to see some gnarly negativity, go look at my how to tie up the boat video, or go look at my how to anchor on a fishing spot video. Only things that I've been doing for 50 years that I had no idea, that I have absolutely no idea how to anchor a boat. And I have no idea how to tie up a boat. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me that I didn't know all these things that I thought I knew so well. Because on the average day, when you're running a sport boat with 100 people on it, you'll probably anchor 15 or 20 times because you're just trying to get the boat perfectly adjusted on the spot. And then on the skiff, or when I'm fishing with my wife on our boat, there's more than 10 times a day that I'll reset my anchor just to make sure I'm on the spot. But now all of a sudden that I put out a video on Facebook, I just found out I don't know anything, Bill. It's amazing. Absolutely.
It is amazing. And I, you know, and I know all of us on here, you know, we've had critics too. And, you know, I let the water run off my back. You know, people will say to me sometimes that, I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm a poser. That was one of the recent ones. And so those people can think of whatever they want. Like, I'm not going to go out on social media and put up a picture of every big fish I've ever caught and to prove I'm a great person or whatever. I'm just going to go down the beach and do it. Like I always think of Michael Jordan, you know, Michael Jordan, like, didn't run around and like a lot of these other athletes and brag about how great he was. His actions spoke for him. He went out on the court. He didn't say a thing, and you didn't have to think about whether he was good or not. You knew he was good. So everybody, just like, don't care about what people say or think about you. Just get out there and have a good time and do what you do best. The Lord knows that you're good.
And that I've been the most hated guy in the industry for a very long time, back in the days with that one website that everyone's on. It the hate was full speed. I can handle it, but that's why I built the community over there at your Saltwater Guide, is because and I'm not taking anything away from any of you, but most people don't want to hear the negative. They don't need that in their lives. They got too much going on. You want good stuff. That's what's really cool about this, is over at the community, the good stuff, the clean stuff, the very emotionally driven reports, because people are just blown away that they're having so much success just following the simple little tweak of how to do this and how to anchor. I just want to tell a quick story about anchoring, because this video that I put out, Bill, on February 3rd on how to anchor on spots, it's got over 3 million views now, and it's got 30,000 comments, and probably 29,999 of them say I don't know how to anchor. And I could take a 90-foot boat with 80 people on it. I could anchor on a spot as big as my iPad and put the right corner 3 numbers up, and each number was a 6-foot section. And I could put the right corner of the boat on this rock, so that when Bill Varney dropped his line down, he was the only guy on the boat that caught a fish. That's pretty good for a guy that doesn't know how to anchor. That's pretty damn good when you're anchored in 60 feet of water and you can do that and you can pinpoint. And I did that 100,000 times a year. I got big shoulders and I can handle it. My wife can't read the comments because her head will explode and she wants to fight everybody and defend me. I just think it's just absolutely hilarious. I thank them all to tell me how. And 99.9% of them are the people that that don't know anything, never even been on a boat before, which is great. I just think it's so cool, though. It's so fun. I have a blast over on the negative social media pages. So don't worry about me, everybody. I'm okay. But if you want to be in a positive arena, come to our website, yoursaltwaterguide.com. And Bill, I'm sorry we went so far over. Gang, if you got offended by anything we said, good. Good. You should get offended. You should wake the hell up. It's time to wake up. Those of you that got offended, you're the problem. So, Bill, you got anything to add? We're going to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, the only thing, Dave, I have to add is that on the comments that we get on Facebook and on, I can't say all the platforms, but the platforms that I have accessibility to, I try after we're done here today and this evening to go through every one of those and try to answer your questions on there. So thank you so much for leaving comments. They're so interesting. And I want to also thank all of you who posted and also sent me videos of Grunion. And the reason I say that in particular, I really appreciate that for lots of reasons. I mean, I know where to fish and all that stuff. But the most important reason was, I worked with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Commission for over a year on this Grunion thing. And they were just, and where they cut it to 30 Grunion and they have all these closures and added monthly closures. And I just struggled with that because I knew that from my own personal empirical evidence, which would be your eyes and your ears and your touch, that wasn't the case, that there were lots and lots of Grunion, way more. There's probably more Grunion now than I remember as a kid, but none of them would, take my information as fact. And they said they're really depleted and all this. And then to get all of these reports, I got I'm not kidding, Dave. I got a report from every major beach from Santa Barbara to the Mexican border of Grunion runs, videos, pictures, dozens of them. And I am so thankful for that from everybody. Thank you so much for sending those to me, because I immediately wrote a very nice email to the director at the Department of Fish and Game and the marine biologists that I work with the videos, and asked them to review them because they're not in line with the decision that they had made. So I really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much, everybody. It was really great.
And I thank you all very, very much for everything and all the great comments and everybody being involved with this show every day. And we'll have a great show for you tomorrow. Kelly Girl is going to be joining us on the show. It's Ask Kelly Girl Questions on Thursday tomorrow. So we'll both be with you, her and I, tomorrow. I want to thank everybody for hanging in with us. A little extra time we went over today. Bill Varney, try to stay warm out there. I got to turn the air back on. I'm sweating like crazy right now. Gang, thanks for watching the show. Thanks for being a part of. We'll talk to you next Wednesday.